So addressing the elephant in the room, yes, this is the same shirt from Amazing Spider-Man. I shot these on the same day. I was too lazy to change my shirt. On with the review. Hey everybody, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking out my channel, and join me for another and final Spider-Man review. Leading up to Spider-Man Far From Home, we've been looking back at all the live-action Sony Spider-Man films in preparation for the newest Spider-Man film coming out next month. And we have hit the last live-action Spider-Man film released from Sony before Spider-Man was incorporated into the MCU with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, once again directed by Marc Webb, and his final film in his Spider-Man franchise. If you'd like to talk about this movie with me, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. Just comment all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below, and let's get a fun conversation going. And with all that out of the way, let's talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was released in 2014. It sees Peter Parker graduate from high school, dealing with his on-again, off-again relationship with Gwen Stacy, as well as facing off with new villains in New York City, Electro played by Jamie Foxx, and Harry Osborn played by Dane DeHaan. So in my Amazing Spider-Man review, I talked about the world, the setting, the tone that Marc Webb set up for that film. What I forgot to mention was how dark the style for The Amazing Spider-Man was, and how I find that really odd for their character that's so colorful as Spider-Man. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they do a completely 180 on the style and look of the film. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 really comes across to me as a Saturday morning cartoon. The first Amazing Spider-Man movie, they tried to make the Spider-Man suit seem more realistic. They tried to make it look like it was made from household items that a teenager would find laying around, in order for it to seem more realistic that Peter Parker could have made the suit.
We had to believe that Peter Parker actually constructed the suit himself, as well as designing it in the computer. He then took that design and created the suit that you see.
In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the suit looks completely studio made, and it looks fantastic. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has my favorite Spider-Man suit in it. I think it looks super colorful, and I think it looks completely ripped out of a comic book. I love it. From the very start of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you can see where the Saturday morning cartoon feel of the movie really comes from, especially with Spider-Man's first interaction with the Rhino.
Knock, knock. Mr. Criminal. Hey, my name is Spider-Man. You can call me Webhead, you can call me Amazing, just don't call me late for dinner, get it? Now the shaker. You a hugger? I'm a killer! Whoa!
And it's actually crazy to think that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was directed by Marc Webb, because the style and look of The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are just so different from one another. So with a new, fun, and vibrant style to The Amazing Spider-Man and the suit looking fantastic, this movie sounds set up for me to just love. And unfortunately, I don't like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 all that much. So first, getting the good out of the way, Andrew Garfield gives another good performance as his Peter Parker. He's a lot of fun as Spider-Man, and he's even funnier in this movie than he was in The Amazing Spider-Man.
What happened to your face? It's filthy.
It is?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was cleaning the chimney.
We have no chimney.
What?
Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy is also very good, and the chemistry between the two characters is still there, and in fact, it's amplified from the first film. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were dating in real life at the time. There's also a lot more action, and the action is more fun in this movie than I find in The Amazing Spider-Man. The reason I don't like this movie all that much is because I don't feel like this movie knows what it wants to be. This movie has a big identity crisis, and it's really confused about what it wants to tell. There are so many plots and subplots going on in this movie. You have Peter Parker going deeper into his search for his parents and what happened to them. Then you have a relationship going on with Peter and Gwen, because at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man, Peter made a promise to Captain Stacy that he would stay away from Gwen. He's been dating Gwen since that time. He's felt guilty about it, so they've broken up, but he doesn't want to break up. He wants to be with her, so there's this complicated on-again, off-again relationship going on with Peter and Gwen. Then you introduce Harry Osborn, portrayed by Dane DeHaan, and he comes in and he finds out that he has a disease that's genetically passed down from his father, Norman Osborn, and he feels that if he can get Spider-Man's blood, he can fight against this disease and save his own life. But Peter Parker as Spider-Man won't give him his blood. So now there's tension with Peter Parker and Harry there. And then you have the story of Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, and his transformation into a villain. Then you have another subplot with Aunt May trying to take care of herself without Uncle Ben, going to nursing school. There's just so much in this movie, and the movie does not know what it wants to focus on, which makes The Amazing Spider-Man 2 feel like a really confusing mess, and it also repeats some of the mistakes of Spider-Man 3. The biggest mistake that it makes from Spider-Man 3 is the villains. Now, in Spider-Man 3, I felt like they had too many villains and they didn't know how to balance them all. They had one set up with Harry that was perfect, and they totally sidelined him to given other two villains that just don't balance well within the story. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's very similar to Spider-Man 3, but to me, instead of being able to balance them all, it doesn't feel like the movie knows which one it wants. It starts off with Max, portrayed by Jamie Foxx, being turned into Electro, and Jamie Foxx as Max before he turns into Electro feels like he's in a completely different movie. The look of the character and the way the character acts feels like he's supposed to be in a Saturday Night Live skit. He doesn't feel like he fits in the movie.
All the crime fighting you've been doing, and all of a sudden you take time out to come visit little old me, Max.
I don't know if that comes from direction or that's just what Jamie Foxx wanted to do with the character, but it was a really odd direction to go in. And then when he does become Electro, you get introduced to Harry Osborn in the film, and thus you get Max sidelined, and he's out of the film for a very long time, as Harry Osborn gets set up to be this villain. And then when Harry Osborn does become this villain, Max re-enters the scene as Electro, and they team up to take down Spider-Man. The movie really feels like it goes from villain to villain. Max, then Harry, then Max, then Harry, then Max and Harry. And it just doesn't feel like it knows which villain it wants to focus on. And in my opinion, the one they should have taken out of this movie is Electro. Electro just feels like the most out-of-place villain and character in the entire movie. Now, the reason they have these villains in the movie is pretty obvious. It's all because Sony wanted to do a Sinister Six movie. They wanted to do a spin-off movie with all the Spider-Man villains for the Sinister Six, and they wanted that set up with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So it's pretty obvious that this was not wanted in the movie, and it totally feels like it when you watch it. Because this movie, much like The Amazing Spider-Man, wants to focus on the relationship between Peter Parker and Gwen. Much like The Amazing Spider-Man, where that really felt like it wanted to be a teen romance high school film as opposed to a Spider-Man film to me. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 feels like it's trying to balance Spider-Man and the relationship much better, but it wants to focus on the on-again, off-again romance of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, and how the promise that Peter Parker has made to Captain Stacy is haunting him and is preventing him from being able to have something that he wants, which is a relationship with Gwen. But every time that storyline tries to rear its head, another plot line gets in its way and it gets completely sidelined. And thus, The Amazing Spider-Man just feels like constantly bouncing around ideas and it can't land on one. It's not a focused movie. It feels completely unfocused. And then you also have Peter Parker exploring and looking more into his parents' past. And what they do with that is really kind of ridiculous. It feels like a completely different movie. And the way that Peter Parker finds his dad's laboratory by going to the subway station and having a subway raise out of the ground to play a video that Richard Parker uploaded from an airplane that he was fighting someone just feels completely out of place in a Spider-Man movie. And that's another thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. With all these plot lines and characters going on, I feel like the movie doesn't have the focus that it should have on the character of Peter Parker. The character of Peter Parker feels very mishandled in this movie. I don't really feel the struggle of being Peter Parker and Spider-Man in this film. It really feels like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker doesn't have that much trouble balancing his normal life with his superhero life. And you never feel like the life of Spider-Man weighs down on Peter Parker in this movie. He always feels like he has a handle on things and he's got it under control. And that just makes the character of Peter Parker in this movie so much less interesting when he doesn't really feel like he has the struggle of being Spider-Man. He still has problems in the movie with Harry Osborn and having the dilemma of not giving his blood and wrecking that friendship. But Harry Osborn and Peter Parker's relationship in this movie feels very abrupt, and it really does feel like a second thought in the movie. There's one scene of them reuniting, talking about the old days, hanging out, and then that's it. They don't see each other again until way later on in the movie when Harry needs Peter's blood, and then that conflict starts there. It's really obvious that Harry Osborn was only in this movie to kill Gwen Stacy at the very end. They wanted to do the death of Gwen, and in some ways I can see how this works. Because Peter Parker made the promise to Captain Stacy about not getting Gwen involved, he's constantly breaking that promise, and because of that broken promise, it leads to Gwen Stacy dying. But the way that they handle Gwen Stacy's death actually puts less of an impact on it because Peter is trying to keep her out of it and Gwen Stacy is constantly trying to get involved with it. It's really not that much of Peter's fault. Gwen Stacy really puts herself in the danger, really puts herself in the situation.
I'm coming with you. You know that you need me.
You're coming with me. Shut the thing. Sorry, I love you. Don't hate me. You can't be here right now. I'm not messing around. You can't be here right now. This is insane.
Guess what? Nobody makes my decisions for me. All right? Nobody. This is my choice. Okay? My choice. My choice.
And so that idea that I think the movie was trying to go for of Peter Parker breaking this promise, and by breaking this promise it leads to him losing the one that he loves, doesn't hit me as hard because even though he broke his promise to Captain Stacy about dating Gwen, Gwen is the one that keeps getting involved in the danger and Peter Parker is trying to keep her out of it. To the point that when they go to fight Electro at the very end of the movie, Peter Parker tells Gwen to stay, and Gwen Stacy just goes into the battlefield. Like, she just drives a police car
My choice.
to where Spider-Man and Electro are fighting with electricity flying everywhere because she just wants to help.
My choice.
It really makes the death of her character less heartbreaking because it was kind of a stupid decision on her part. And this movie is actually really sad to watch back when you know that Sony wanted to set up a Sinister Six movie, because there were so many references and Easter eggs and setups in this movie for a Sinister Six movie that just go nowhere. In fact, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, watching it back again, knowing that this series has been cancelled for a while now, and seeing all the things that were set up and will never be resolved, really makes this movie feel like a waste of time nowadays. But even if there was an Amazing Spider-Man 3, I don't know where they would go with it. This movie alone doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to do. In fact, there's a whole alternate ending and deleted scene where Peter Parker gets visited at a graveyard by his father, revealing that his father is actually alive. That's a big thing to cut out of a movie like this. And it just really shows that they just didn't know what they wanted to do with this movie. And in the end, guys, Amazing Spider-Man 2 has some cool Spider-Man action. It's got a great Spider-Man suit. It's got a nice performance by Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. And those two characters are great again together. But where all the problems land with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is how many plots they have within it. How they all don't flow together in a coherent story. They feel very messy. I constantly just feel like I'm being bounced around a bunch of ideas, none of which they ever land on. And with the series being cancelled and all of those ideas not being able to be resolved, this movie feels like a gigantic waste of time nowadays. And while there's some entertainment in it and some enjoyable scenes, and Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man I think is really good in this movie, I have two favorite scenes of Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man in this film. One of them is when he helps the kid in the alley who's being bullied and walks him home. I think that's a really great capture of the Spider-Man character. And I like when he first faces off against Electro in Times Square. And before he starts swinging in there and fighting Electro, he actually tries to talk to him and have a reasonable conversation.
How about you come with me? Go somewhere we'll talk. Away from all these people, okay?
Until one of the policemen shoots him, and then he's forced to fight. I think those two scenes really captured Spider-Man. I think Andrew Garfield brought a great interpretation of Spider-Man in those two scenes. And I really do enjoy Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man in this movie. But while it does have some entertainment scenes, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 nowadays really does just feel like a waste of time. But I am a believer that everything happens for a reason, in the big scales and in the small scales, like in movies. And because The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was the lowest grossing Spider-Man movie out of all 5 at the time, it led Sony to make a deal with the Marvel Cinematic Universe to let them have Spider-Man. So in my mind, we had to get these 3 failures in order to get something great. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts and opinions on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But what do you think about The Amazing Spider-Man 2? Comment down below, let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And guys, since I already talked about Spider-Man Homecoming in my MCU series, that is the last of the live-action Sony Spider-Man movies that we are talking about. All that's left to do is go see Spider-Man Far From Home. Thank you so much for joining me for this journey and talking about all these Spider-Man movies with me. I truly appreciate it. And let me know what your favorite Spider-Man movie is down below in the comment section. As always guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. Once again guys, my name is Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.